Hello, Professor Matthew Rotella here, and in this tutorial I'm going to be going over tiling textures for building terrain, but also within the context of building a layered shader and using different amounts of tiling with different shaders. So what I got going on here is I got three different material swatches that I can use to basically build up layers on my terrain. Each is a tiling texture. These are just three textures I grabbed off of Polyhaven, uh, so they're out there. And I got this bedrock, this like cracked rock texture. I'm gonna use as my base. I have this mud that I'm gonna have go over top of it, and then I got this like grass, leaves, and sticks that is just gonna get scattered, kind of around over top of everything. So uh, and at the moment, I have all the shaders built. They're rendering like this. It's a complete set of maps that I downloaded from the website, complete with the displacements. We got the displacements hooked up. And yeah. So, uh, first of all, I guess, like, before we dive into uh, layered textures, let's just go over tiling. I'd say most people that use the program here, I'll do it with this one first because yeah, most people who use the program are well aware that you can get your UVs and you can just scale them and it will make the texture tile. And while this is true, this is not really the best way to work. Ideally, instead of tiling textures by scaling your UVs, which it limits a lot of your model's utility. No matter what it is, you're likely working with something that isn't just a square. Uh, but no matter what it is, tiling textures by scaling your UVs, you lose a lot of utility by like exiting the 0 to 1 UV space and working this way. So let's get this back to the way it was, and then also, I mean, uh, you can see that when you tile something, you can start to see and recognize the pattern pretty easily once it tiles to a certain degree. So that can kind of limit how you use a texture, even if it is tiling. And if you're talking about something that's a large piece of terrain, uh, without tiling getting the resolution you need to not just be looking at pixel soup can be difficult. But then that's where building a layered shader where you can have different rates of tiling broken up by some sort of random element uh, can really uh, allow you to build a shader that tiles that you can get the resolution out of rather easily. All right, but yeah, how do we go about doing this? So, like I said, these shaders are already built in my case, and of course we're going to be throwing them onto this ground plane. Renders might be a little noisier than usual. I have my settings turned down so that I can render quickly for the tutorial. But anyway, you're probably asking, well, if I don't scale my UVs, how am I meant to tile things? Well, uh, if you've been building shaders in Maya, whether you're new or old with the program, I'm sure you've noticed that you have nodes that pop up in your graph editor. I'll usually call it the node editor, even though I think it's more within the context of the hypershade, it's called the graph editor, but that's confusing since it can be confused with other editors, so I'll call it the node editor, although there's also a node, whatever. I'm getting um, here within the hypershades node editor, uh, we whenever you place a file or basically any 2D texture, you get this place 2D texture node that pops up on the file, and you'll see that you have repeat UVs built into here. So, for example, if I want to have my rock bed tile 2 times, then I can repeat, and which in this case, I'm going to be stretching my texture now, but I can have it repeat one way and then come back in, repeat the other, and Now I have it tiling, and you know, I can push this as far as I want to get as many on here as I need. So yeah, that's all well and good, but now how do we build our layered shader? Almost every rendering engine worth its salt has some sort of layered shader. I'm going to be working in Redshift in this tutorial, but Arnold works basically the exact same way. So I have Redshift materials, and then there's this Redshift material blender right underneath it, which you'll see for each part of the blender, it has a material that you can plug in, and then a blend color that uh, will be on the layer above it that determines how much of that layer shows through. So just as a quick test to show you how this works before we start using our terrain, what we can do is let's put a couple simple colors on here. So, and if you're working in something like Arnold, like I said, Arnold has the same thing. There's the AI mix shader, which only has 2 layers, but it has more utilities to work with in terms of blending them. And then there's the layer shader, which I think has 8 that you can blend between. Now, Redshift has another blender that we'll get into later that's specifically for displacements. It's the RS displacement blender, but Arnold doesn't explicitly have that. A lot of times when I'm blending displacements in Arnold, if I do that, I'll actually use Maya has a layered texture utility, and I'll even use that to build layered displacements. Regardless, yeah, let's build a material here. So let's just drop in. I'm gonna delete these in a second, so I'm not gonna bother naming them or anything. Let's just make one blue, and we'll make another one like orange. Okay, and we'll plug blue into the base, and we'll plug orange into our layer 1. This is my material blender 2. I'll grab that, and I'll apply this to it. Now blue is our base, and you know, if I start rendering, you can see that I'm getting a mighty fine aggressive blue there. So how's this working? Well, my orange isn't showing up because, well, I don't have my blend color coming up on top of it, and you can see how it adaptively changes there. So now if I render, it's going to be all orange, because white will allow whatever layer is on top of it to show through. And of course, we can apply whatever we want to this blend color. We can plug in any sort of map. So, like, for example, I could even just get a ramp, and I'll even just leave it as this, and then even with the ramp, I could just repeat it in V, and like 5 times, and then that'll more or less give me stripes, and I can go ahead and render, and this will probably give us a pretty wild looking thing. So yeah, nifty stuff. Where the ramp is white, that's where my orange shows through. Where the ramp is its darkest, that's where the blue shows through. Pretty straightforward. So let's start using this to build our terrain. So yeah, let's go ahead and just yeah, let's let's just get rid of all this. Okay, and let's start building things out. Like I said, I want to have my rock bed as my base, so I'll plug that into my base color, and then I want the mud on top of that, so that's going to be my layer 1, and then I want my grass on top of that, so that's going to be my layer 2. Alright, so let's start adding things on one at a time. Well, first of all, we'll decide how much we want our rock to appear, which our other layers are all totally done. Like, they're totally flat, or totally black, so they're not going to show through at all. All that's going to show through is the rock. Let's get an angle at this so we can see how much it's coming through. Yeah, so the whole thing is just our one rock tile, and honestly, this doesn't look too bad as just itself. Some of these details might look a little too large for what we're dealing with here, but yeah, overall, not bad at all. But still, if you were to get closer to this, you would start to lose your resolution more and more. So let's tile this a few times. Now, where this is going to get a little tedious, well, we'll just do the color to start. Or wait, that's my grass. Let's lay this out. Did that reorder things for me the way I want? No. Okay. Whatever. But we'll repeat the UV a couple times. Let's see if that gives us something. Nah, maybe let's go 2 more times. So we'll have 4 total tiles on here. Yeah, let's have 4 total tiles of our rock here. And I feel like that's kind of having it show up at a rate that works pretty well. And we could push this even further, because we still can't quite see that it's tiling yet. I mean, if you look really close, you might be able to notice, but overall, not too bad. And I can see that my normals are showing through a little stronger, which actually, I should probably up my normals in general. Because by default they're rather subtle with Redshift, and this might be pushing them too far, but let's see what we get. So yeah, might end up overcompensating a little bit, but ultimately looking good. Alright, so yeah, let's keep chugging along here. So let's start building out our layers. So we want to have our mud going over top, which also our normals right now, you might have noticed that they don't match our tile. That's because I would need to go through and just change all of these to 4. Usually I don't go and change every map until I'm satisfied with where my colors are. But I mean, it doesn't take long to go through and change them all. Where? And oh goodness, it dropped my displacement all the way down here. Anyway, whatever. We'll get there with the whole displacement business. But yeah, now that I've done that, all of my tiling will match up And see, working through the Place 2D texture node can be really essential because, well, if you don't, then like all of your things have to tile a base amount by default, and you might not want all of your textures to tile. Period. Uh, it's like besides, like I said, other sorts of things that kind of like other sorts of utilities that you lose by not having your UVs conform to, you know, better guidelines. In any case, yeah, let's start layering our mud over top, which there's all sorts of noise that are available within Maya. Uh, so like I could use like fractal, I could use just this noise, which has all sorts of noise in it. But for this, I usually like to use simplex noise. And the reason for that is like I can adjust the scale and different ratios and get like islands, like these black islands, really easily. And by being able to get islands, you can more easily tweak where things are gonna show up, and you can get uh, like this higher contrast really easily with the simplex noise. So basically, what I want to do is I just kind of want to figure out like how contrasty I want this to get, and I really just want to figure out like where all do like how frequently do I want my mud to pop up. And yeah, like I could say to like look at this and say like, hey, I don't like how my mud is looking. Like I want to get more resolution out of that texture. Well, this is a tiling texture, so that means that I can just go in here, and if I want the frequency in my mud to be double that of my rock, then I can just set my Place 2D texture to tile 8 times, and now I got 8 times the resolution out of that texture, which was already 4K to start, and it is, a tiling texture, and at 8 times you would definitely notice the pattern by now. But since, before when I was showing you the swatch, like you could really easily see a pattern after just like 4 or 5 times, if it's small enough especially. But yeah, here I am tiling it 8 times, and yeah, there it is. Coming through, getting all that resolution out of it, and then if I want to change how this appears, well, then I always just am able to go in here and edit my simplex noise, where if I want it to show through more evenly, I can introduce more gray values, and if I want my islands, like I can make these really stark islands, but then up my frequency, and now this is like effectively tiling as well, and you can kind of build like tiles on top of tiles and stuff like that. And if I just want, so like I can have several smaller islands, or I could just have it like adjust things where it like even just shows up like a little bit here and there. Change my distortion. Mess around with my scale. Yeah, decide like where all I want it to show up. Like maybe I want like a bunch of mud in some place, but like I want hardly any in another. So like here, like I said, I'm getting that that sort of mud meets rock effect. And but yeah, but let's get a few more patches in there. So yeah. So there we go. Yeah, I got my... And since the noise is, you know, a randomized pattern, it adds that, like, the... When... I mean, it adds that layer of, yeah, like, sort of making, like, a natural formation where your texture can appear, you know, kind of work for you. Because before... Uh, like if you just straight tile a texture, like the issue is that you immediately lose your randomness and you get a very recognizable pattern. And then this gives you that advantage of tiling a texture while making it so that you just totally reintroduce all of that randomness. And like also in this case, we're still like building up a texture. And we get these, like, you know, all these fun dials where we can kind of dynamically tweak things to suit whatever kind of terrain we're texturing, because of course we're not going to just be texturing a plane. But anyway, let's start blending in our grass. And for sometimes with the grass I'll just use regular noise because it's easier to get like a better spread, so to speak. But I'll use simplex again, and we'll even just see. Well, I guess before I even do that, let's just see what our grass looks like. So how much do we need to tile it for our grass to look believable? So our grass is now full white on its blend. So that means we get nothing but it. And we can see that these sticks are very much not a believable scale. So that means, yeah, we're going to need to go ahead and tile this. I mean, I can try and have them pass for logs, but also, again, you want to get more resolution out of it. So let's go up here to my grass, and let's go straight to 6, and we'll walk it back from there if we need to. Render. And for the apparent scale of our twigs, this is probably believable. I could maybe push it a little further though. Let's go 2 more actually. We'll go 8. Yeah. And at 8, you know, we get a very apparent pattern, but yeah, this is probably more the scale of our details that like compared to our character that they should be. And yeah, and we're getting, yeah, that much more resolution out of this. But yeah, now let's bring in our noise to our material blender, and let's see what's going on. Material blender, yeah, we'll go like I said, any noise will do, but I'll go with simplex. I really tend to like it a lot for this kind of work. And let's just hit render at the default and see what we're getting. And you know what? Overall, that's not bad. Like kind of immediately, not too bad. You know, we still get our bare rock coming through in places. We still get some bare mud coming through in places, but yeah, it's still blending in over top. But I can even maybe go prevalent here. And I don't know. I could go about tweaking this a lot. Maybe I won't even scatter this as much as I am. Maybe I'll walk this back. Let's see how it looks if we kind of do it more like I did when I got just like a big, some bigger, darker splotches. Just tweaking. There we go. Tweak that ratio. And now this will give us like a splotch up in the corner more so, or in this corner. But yeah, that's not bad. And here we can start to see our tile more so. And of course, like I'm just working with 3 things here. You can keep building and building, but you know what? I think it was better when it was more all over. And you know, these are just 3 textures that I thought would work. I didn't like pick things that would be perfect, but you know, this is giving us a decent look. I kind of like how this splotch lands right in the middle of this splotch of black, and yeah, and then this is a breakup enough that we're not seeing our textures come through. Yeah, this will work. This will work well. Okay, so that's all well and good. But yeah, now let's plug in. Let's have the rest of our maps match the. Let's have the rest of our maps match the same amount of tiling. Yeah, so this is 8. So go through 8 and 8 and you got the displacement shader up here. This is 8. Make sure that my displacements are tiling correct also. And this is no problem. And simplex noise, don't need to mess with. This is 4. I already went through and changed all of those, although I'm going to need to make sure. Oh, I changed my displacement already also, and then the mud is also going 8. Okay, so sure. But yeah, I could have gone lower frequency with any of these for sure. I just kind of let the scale of my visuals guide me, and it kind of just landed me here. And then my mud's displacement is down here at 8 also. Yeah, 4 for the rock, and then yeah, displacement. Okay, so now let's see how it looks now that all of our maps are lining up like they should be. Because this should help a little also. Yeah, because it really helps you get these just like these nice blends between your surfaces too. let's do this. Okay, so let's get the Redshift displacement blender, which, like I said, doing the displacement blending in Arnold, if you're doing that, uh, is usually what I would do with just the Maya layered texture node. Okay. But anyway, we got our base input, which should again be our rock. So I'm going to navigate down to where our rock bed displacement is, and that's going to be our base input. And then our next input is going to be our mud, which is down here. And it's going to be displace input 0. And then our next one is going to be our sticks, which is up here, which there are easier ways to kind of like connect things, but I'm just trying to be as visual as possible for here. Although you'll notice that you only have 3 layers of displacement to blend between, where the layer shader, the material blender goes all the way up to 6 layers. So there's that. And okay, now we would want our weights to happen in very much a similar fashion. So this simplex noise 2, this out color would be, or use the alpha, would be our displacement weight 0, and then this one would be our displacement weight 1, and then this is going into the out of our displacement blender, is going into the displacement of our material blender. And now we've built out one hell of a network with blended displacements and blended materials, all combined with layered fractals. And oops, let's go into Redshift, Camel Clark only, displacement, enable, and I might have to tweak my scales and stuff, but let's see what we would get. Oh. Illegal shader. All right. Oh. And oopsie poopsie there. Just had a small slip. Just plugged in my color into my displacement input 1, where of course I want to put in my displacement, which only makes sense. And now, with that done, my displacements will happen. Which it looks like they could stand to be pushed. Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Let's change my maximum displacement. I think my scale is already being pushed on some of these. So I'm going to push my maximum displacement here to 4. And yeah, now we're getting much more happening. And of course, this is all being blended with the same noise that I use to blend everything else. And I can even push certain things crazy far if I want to try. Like if I wanted my rock to come through much more aggressively, let's say, which let's even up my, let's try something real crazy. Let's double it, and then I'll go to my displacement for my rock bed, which is here. Very good. And yeah, I'll push my scale all the way to 8. So and now we can see how much more the rock punches through, where our mud is still kind of pushed down lower, so we get these like pits of mud in our rocky terrain. And yeah, over here it's especially nice, where we kind of get this smaller island where the rock kind of has like a natural peak almost in the midst of everything. And yeah, okay, well, uh, and then, applying this to geometry that's, already sculpted, already deformed, like this is just crazy useful, crazy helpful. You can get some really wild and just premium look to how your objects and your characters render, and like just how your terrain renders. Like I said, this is all focus on rendering for your various terrain. And since you're allowed to, since this permits you to more easily push your tiling even further, you can get more and more resolution, which will, out of all of your textures, which will allow you to kind of have them pass more and more scrupulous examination. Um, and yeah, we're getting some really nice peaks and valleys. Anyway, uh, that's it. You have a good day.